Okay, welcome everybody, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. My name is Marilyn Castriata. I'm the Community Engagement Manager with Kestrel Land Trust. We're based in Amherst, and as many of you know, our mission is to conserve and care for forests, farms, and riverways in the Connecticut River Valley of Western Massachusetts, and to do so while nurturing an enduring love of the land. Tonight's online event is the second in our 2024 online speaker series titled Conservation Action for Biodiversity. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. James Lowenthal. James is Smith College's Mary Elizabeth Moses Professor and Chair of Astronomy. And here's some background on James, which I know that you'll find fascinating. Dr. Professor Lowenthal uses some of the largest telescopes on Earth and in space to study the formation and evolution of galaxies in the early universe, as well as exoplanets orbiting stars in our own Milky Way galaxy. He leads the Massachusetts chapter of DarkSky International, a local dark sky advocacy group called Northampton City Lights, as well as professional astronomy committees on light pollution at the national and international level. He advocates widely for protection of the night sky against light pollution from the ground and now from satellite mega constellations such as SpaceX Starlinks. He spends as much time outdoors under the stars as he can. So with that, welcome, James, and now turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Marilyn, for that introduction and for inviting me here. And thank you to everybody for coming to discuss this together. I imagine that you have numerous different reasons and curiosities about this issue, and I hope that we'll get a chance to talk. I'll just reiterate what Marilyn said, which is I welcome questions during my presentation as well. You don't need to wait. If there's a burning question, please pop it into the chat, and I will try to monitor it and hope to see that and respond in real time. Here's the bottom line. Darkness at night is essential for life. The mission of Kestrel to preserve land is inextricably linked to the sky. All of life depends on darkness at night and a dark sky to thrive. And if we care about biodiversity and conservation, then we have to protect the night sky. That is just, it's essential. It's part of conservation. This little video clip is a picture of not a distant galaxy, our own galaxy. That's the Milky Way, that band of light that starts off vertically in this short clip from the White Mountains. As in this time lapse, the Earth turns and the stars seem to rotate across the sky in some of the darkest skies that we can find in the Northeast. And we're so lucky to live here in the Valley, where we have abundant history and wildlife and nature surrounding us. And this is just one example, a full moon rising over a field in Hadley. And you see here the dark band of blue directly over the horizon where the moon is. That's the shadow of the Earth rising up as the sun sets behind us. And so many of us love to be outside to enjoy the splendors of nature in all its forms. And maybe if you're at the right place in the right time, you might see something like this, the view over Skinner House on top of Mount Holyoke, the full moon rising at that special time of year when, if you're just in the right place, it rises right behind Skinner House. And you probably all know that we're coming up on an especially auspicious moon cycle with the total solar eclipse coming up on April 8th. One of my favorite things to do is to go out at night on my skis in the winter and out onto a frozen lake like this one, Lake Fitzgerald, not this year. This was a few years back, in the full moon. It's so bright on a night like this that you practically need dark glasses to see. And here is a view from much closer to downtown Northampton, actually looking towards downtown Northampton, on a night when we ought to be able to see the Milky Way, but we can barely see it. And there's no full moon here as a bright source of light. So why is it that we can't see the Milky Way? Well, it's because of things like this. The county jail right next door, it's about half a mile away or a mile, and it's got bright lights shining right up into the sky. And you can see the really big glow on the left, lower left in the picture. That's light from Springfield and East Hampton and Chicopee. Closer look at the jail. Again, it's a mile away, but those lights are going straight up into the sky. And this is from the location of some new buildings, in fact, put up by Habitat Humanity. Those residents are going to have this as their backyard view. Those lights are going to be shining into their windows. It doesn't have to be that way. Here is another prison not far away that, and I'm not supporting prisons here. I'm just saying if there is a prison, let's think about how it interacts with its neighbor and with the environment. This one is actually extremely carefully, intentionally lit to protect the night sky. It happens to be next door to one of the most famous places in the world for astronomy, Stellafane, which is the site of an annual convention that's been going for 100 years of telescope makers and amateur astronomers. And the lighting at this particular prison, this correctional facility, is so successful that you could drive by it and not know that there's a prison there. It's totally possible to do that. So just wanted to make this clear. It doesn't have to be bad just because you've got a particular use there. Here's a view of downtown Northampton from Smith College, where I work. And some of the stars are visible overhead, but look how bright those clouds are. And remember, those clouds are supposed to be dark. If you see white clouds at nighttime, that's because of light pollution. They're lit from underneath by the city lights. Those clouds should be dark. And think about the people who are down there in the streets of Northampton in that ocean of light. Can they see the stars? They probably don't even look up because there's so much light pollution. Here's a finer grain view. Where does the light pollution come from? Well, it comes from the bowling alley and this parking lot and the city's own parking garage and the top of the parking garage where the lights are on all night long, whether anybody's there or not. And from this other parking lot, again, lights on all night long, nobody there. It's from this development and that one and this building and that mall. It's all over the place. It's from this section just behind Thorne's Marketplace in downtown Northampton, the church. Let's hold on a second. How did we get here? This is the first gas street lamp in the United States. It's got a historical plaque on its post. It's in Baltimore, Maryland. It doesn't look that different from street lamps you can find here in Northampton today. But there's a crucial difference. The light that was inside this street light 200 years ago, a gas lamp, had about the equivalent of a few tens of candles worth of brightness. Street lights today, and you can't even see the detail here because it's so overexposed, a very similar design, but with a bright LED light in it that's tens to hundreds of times brighter. And that light design was never designed to put out that much light. So we're kind of fitting a square hole in a square peg in a round hole here. This is just one example of how cities are overlit by habit and without a clear intention. If you happen to stop in Northampton in the summertime along this street, which is Strong Avenue, you'll see that there's outdoor dining all summer, summer on Strong. And if you sit down for a bite to eat there, you are blinded by these streetlights. Look, that guy's even got a headache. He's holding his head. I'm sure that's why he's got his hand up there like that. It's just blinding. You ask the people in the restaurants here, the lights shining right into the restaurant. It's not romantic. It's not beautiful. It's not effective. It's not safe. There's nothing good about it. And it's just kind of by mistake. This is the roundabout at Damon Road and I-91 and Route 9, right by the Coolidge Bridge in Northampton on the way to Hadley. This is just when it was under construction, just before they turned the new lights on. It's illuminated by moonlight, and here it is after the lights are turned on. The lights are 500 times brighter than moonlight. Do we need that much light for safety? Is that actually making this intersection safer for anybody? It's not just these streetlights and city and commercial developments, it's a lot of private residences as well. This is one in my neighborhood, that's an old colonial, and it's got ye olde colonial type, uh, lantern fixtures, light fixtures beside the door, but what's inside them, this is analogous to that streetlight. What's in them is super bright LEDs. So when they're on, it's blinding. And I walk past here night after night, and I have to shield my eyes with my hand so that I can see the sidewalk. It's not actually helping me, it's hurting visibility. Likewise, these lights were installed supposedly to help visibility for the residents walking up the path to this house in my neighborhood, but you can't even see the path because the lights are installed shining directly into your eyes. This is the equivalent of taking a flashlight and instead of shining it on the ground, shining it into your own eyes. We all know that that makes no sense. We all know that's not how you use a flashlight. Somehow we forget that when we install outside lighting a lot. It could be better. It could be like this. A neighbor across the street from me who installed these beautiful lights that are shining down only. They're carefully shielded. They're a warm color. It's a nice diffuse glow. You can see the path perfectly well and not trip over the steps. It's perfect. It's exactly where they should be. But it takes the forethought to do that. All right, to summarize what I've just said, what is light pollution? It's too much light. It's excessive light at night. It's light that's poorly aimed. It's going in the wrong direction. It's light that shines out instead of down or even up into the sky. It's light that shines into places where it was not intended. For example, into a neighbor's house or a neighboring property or onto a natural area. It's light that's on all night long, even when nobody's there, like this parking lot behind Main Street in Northampton. Middle of the night, nobody there. Why is this a problem? There are several reasons, and this is the view from my side yard. That's my house on the left, and there's the street light in the middle that shines onto my property. And I'm trying to watch the stars, but there are other reasons that light pollution is a problem. It's bad for human health. It's bad for human safety. It doesn't help to have the light shining in your eyes. It hinders safety. It's a total waste of money and energy. Of course, it ruins the night sky. Again, the clouds are bright here for that same reason. All that light is coming from the city, and it's bad for wildlife. And that's what I'll spend the most attention on during the next minutes with you. But a little bit on each of the other ones. It's bad for human health. These are some of the effects of light pollution on human health. Elevated rates of these serious problems. And you might say, well, what's the evidence for that? The evidence is studies of hundreds of thousands of people. For example, done by Harvard researchers. The World Health Organization has classified shift work, where people are up at night exposed to artificial light, as a probable carcinogen. The Harvard nurse study over decades has tracked the rates of breast cancer in correlation with artificial light at night, and they find a very, very strong positive correlation. If you live in a light polluted area, you are more likely to suffer breast cancer for women, prostate cancer for men, and multiple other forms of hormonal cancers. Well, how can this be? How can it be that something as innocuous and benign and useful and ubiquitous as light could be linked to cancer? And there actually is a mechanism. When the sun goes down, the amount of blue light drops dramatically. Our eyes are programmed to look for that drop in the blue light amount, and then to send a signal to the brain to start producing melatonin. Melatonin is a powerful hormone that floods our body, that resets most of our circadian rhythms, all of our bodily functions, respiration and digestion and wakefulness and sleepiness and everything else, temperature. That is our 24-hour cycle. And it's reset every day when the sun goes down by that flood of melatonin at the beginning of the night. In the presence of blue light, which we have in abundance now, especially with LED lights, at night, we don't get that signal and we don't produce melatonin. It turns out melatonin is also a powerful cancer suppressant. In the presence of melatonin, tumors do not grow rapidly. But if we suppress melatonin, the tumors grow rapidly. So there's the link. Are all lights out there causing this problem of melatonin suppression? No, not necessarily, but we do have a new and growing problem. In the old days, of course, before electric lights, all the light we had was firelight, like the light at the bottom. Each of these three little pictures here shows the spectrum or the amount of light of different colors that is produced by these different sources of light. You can see that firelight produces mostly red light. Practically none of it is blue. An old incandescent light, the kind that's about to be outlawed or already is, also produces mostly red light, very little blue light. On the other hand, new LEDs, the top one of these three, new LED lights produce a lot of blue light. And as a result, they can suppress melatonin by up to 80%, a huge difference from just 10 years ago. Are all LED lights the same? No, not at all. Here you see a little more detailed spectrum showing if you took a prism and broke up the light of the sun, you would get the top middle spectrum, the daylight spectrum. If you took an old incandescent, you would get the top left picture. If you do the same for any of these different kinds of lights, you could see what the colors are that make them up. All the pictures at the bottom are the spectra of different kinds of LED lights. And you see there's a big range. Some of them, like the one on the far right, has this huge blue emission. A lot of that kind of LED light is coming out as blue light. And progressively less and less as you move towards the left until you get to that 2700K there, where there's a very small blue bump. It's not zero, but it's much smaller. So you can see that this way of characterizing lights with this Kelvin number, 2700, 3004, 5000, it tells you how much blue light there is. The higher that number, the more blue light there is. The lower the number, the less blue light. And we are learning blue light is the worst for human health. The American Medical Association recognized this quite a while ago. This is almost 10 years ago now, a report they put out saying, do not use lights bluer than 3000K. And furthermore, LED lights are a serious new cause of glare, and that has problems for road safety and temporarily blinding people and even causing perhaps permanent damage to eyes. This glare issue, what does that mean? Well, here's a diagram showing what glare is. There's a street light on the left, and it's shining down in that yellow cone, and that yellow cone shows the useful light, the area to be lit, meaning that's the part that you probably intended to light with this light. It's the street or the sidewalk or the parking lot underneath that light. But you'll notice that the light is also shining out at much shallower angles into the glare zone. It's even shining upward into the sky. There's a section there called direct upward light. There's a figure there, a person standing there who's getting hit in the eye directly by that direct glare, although they're not standing inside the yellow cone. So they're not really getting the benefit of the light. They're too far away for the light to be useful, to illuminate their pathway usefully, but the glare is still a problem. And you see the light is shining into the building. Light trespass. That was probably not the intention of whoever designed this light, but that's the effect. And there are lots of pictures like this online. Here's another one with a building in the middle with a bad light on the left that's causing light trespass, shining in the neighbor's building, and a good light on the right that's shining down only and allowing the neighbors to sleep. So that's much more of a responsible light. We all know what it's like to be blinded by glare when we're driving. The oncoming headlights of an oncoming car blind us temporarily. If we could only block out that light with our hand, maybe we would see, oh, there are people right there, we were about to hit them. It's dangerous to have glare. It's dangerous to have light shining directly in your eyes. We should avoid it. It's been known for a long time this is a problem. Back in the 70s, these authors studied how far down the road you can see without an oncoming car and with an oncoming car. And it's a big difference, 700 feet versus less than 300 feet. That's a big difference in your ability to respond to what you see on the roadway. The Federal Highway Administration says this about glare. Disability glare, the glare that is temporarily blinding, is one of the most important elements to control in a lighting system. It affects your ability to adequately see, particularly for older drivers. Notice they are not saying, we need more light everywhere. What they're saying is we need less glare everywhere. And those of us who are beyond a certain age know that it gets worse with age. And this graph shows as a function of age of people, that's the x-axis, the y-axis is our ability to withstand glare. Young eyes are able, they're very resilient against glare. Older eyes, not so much. Our older eyes are more susceptible to glare, more vulnerable. So many times you'll hear people say, you'll hear especially elderly people say, oh, I can't go out at night because I can't see. I can't drive at night because my night vision is too bad. And it's, I would say 90% of that is actually that there are bad lights. It's not your eyes. You can probably see fine if we could just control the glare. Is more light always better? Do we actually need all the light that's out there? Here again is the view of my street, and that's the street light that is right outside my house. It is the scene of a crime. Our car was parked in our driveway. It's directly underneath that street light. And our car was vandalized twice in the middle of the night. It's a 2007 Prius, which has a catalytic converter, which has precious metals in it that are valuable on the black market. So thieves come in the middle of the night and they jack up the car and they cut the catalytic converter and they steal it and they let the car down and they move on to the next Prius down the block. And they do all this in minutes. And probably the street light helped them see what they were doing. Did it deter them? Obviously not. Twice. And I know 3 other people in Northampton, same story. Prius parked under a street light, vandalized in the same way. So obviously the street light doesn't stop crime. And in fact, there's lots of study about this, lots of evidence supporting what I'm saying, and no conclusion, no scientific conclusion after decades of study that more light equals less crime. And we can talk much more about that if you like, but that's my assertion, and there's a lot to back it up. In fact, in general, here's the takeaway from this bit about glare. We don't need more light, we need better light. Here's a typical backyard light, a so-called security light, and it's blasting out into the yard. It's making it harder to see. In fact, if you could just block that light with your hand, hold your hand up, you would see, oh, there's a person standing there in the gate. They're actually in the first picture too. You just can't see them because the glare is so bad. All right, what else? Light pollution is a waste of money and it's a waste of energy. And it wastes at least $3 billion a year, probably more like $50 billion a year in electricity consumed to send light directly up into the sky in all the ways I've shown you. The pictures that I'm showing you are typical all around the country. It's a complete waste. That light is not helping anybody. It's hurting us, and we're creating greenhouse gases to make that light. And now finally, blue light is bad for wildlife. All light is actually bad for wildlife, all artificial light, human-made light, but especially blue light. This screech owl, photographed just right here on the Smith College campus, needs darkness at night to thrive. Darkness is its habitat. It's awake here at the end of the day as the sun is setting, but it's not its most active time. It's getting ready for its most active time. And all living beings need darkness at night to thrive, whether they are nocturnal or diurnal. It's hardwired for us to depend on darkness at night. Here's another screech owl in my backyard in its habitat. I have a trail cam that is just fantastic. I live very close to Smith College and downtown, and we have this wild area in the back. I've got dozens of neighbors right out the front. I'm less than a mile from downtown, but behind us we have these animals at night. I never knew that coyotes were running through my backyard. I lived here for 20 years, and only when I started this trail cam did I realize that. And these foxes, we have red foxes, we have gray foxes, and they're there almost every night. And these raccoons are just doing their thing, and they're doing it at night. and they depend on the cycles, the natural cycles of day and night to thrive, and they're nocturnal animals. But well, this beaver is somewhat nocturnal. It's actually crepuscular. It's active mostly at dusk and at dawn. This one is in Fitzgerald Lake. They're all around. Every morning when I'm walking the dog along the Mill River, I see fresh signs of the beavers that had been active the night before. So these are all mammals that are mostly nocturnal. It turns out 70% of mammals are nocturnal. So the activity at night is phenomenal. We go to bed, we're diurnal, but when we go to bed, it's when the activity begins for most animals. But even for the diurnal animals like us, darkness at night is essential. It's not just that they need darkness to hide, they need darkness to rest and to recover and to sleep well. And this mama opossum with her 8 babies crossing my street a couple of years ago after probably a long night's work. She could barely move, but she's heading off to bed first thing in the morning. The bat in the background is, of course, fully nighttime and depends critically on darkness at night, and light pollution is a problem for both of these critters. But it's also a problem for this bear that is taking a snooze in the tree in my backyard. Bears are out during the day all the time. They're more diurnal than nocturnal, but they need darkness at night just as we do. They also have melatonin that flows in the when the sun goes down. When that doesn't happen, when they are subject to light pollution, all of their critical functions are negatively affected. Their reproduction, their ability to find and consume food, their migration patterns, and these effects are all interwoven among the various complex species that make up ecosystems. Ecosystems are under stress from lots of different things. One of those major stresses is light pollution. Many of us in the valley here are lovers of birds, bird watchers. I'm one of them. These are all pictures of warblers, migrating warblers in May, within a mile of my house. And they've all flown up from Central America, even South America, thousands of miles en route to their summering breeding ground, either here in Massachusetts or further up north in New England or up in Quebec or elsewhere in Canada. And they are mostly migrating at night. 80% of migrating birds migrate at night. And many or most of them use the stars to navigate. They also use other things to navigate, but the stars are important elements. What happens if they can't see the stars because of light pollution? Maybe they end up dead, like this vireo that also just flew up from Central America that died on the streets of Northampton. I can't say for sure, but the chances are this bird died because it was distracted by the lights, the city lights of downtown Northampton. It either circled disoriented overhead until it died of exhaustion, or maybe it hit a building, also disoriented by the bright lights. This happens to 100 million to a billion birds every year in the United States. A billion bird deaths attributable to light pollution, most of it during migration season. More migrating birds here at Fitzgerald Lake, a conservation area. It's just a few miles. It's one of the gems of Northampton, but similar to many of Kestrel's land, it's a much loved natural area where people are the visitors and the animals are at home. And it gives me so much joy to go to these places like Fitzgerald Lake and see these jewels, these gems that are gone in the winter and coming back in the summer. And this wood duck, same. If you go to this website at birdcast.info, you can see for yourself what birds are migrating overhead that night or last night. You see here these different species: great crested flycatcher, yellow warbler. On the left, you can see the numbers of birds that flew overhead May 11th, 2022. Upwards of 35, 40,000 birds a night just in this one area. So this is just one demonstration of the tremendous number of migrating birds in May and then again in October. And we are certainly in that flyway. But here's the problem. Artificial light at night interferes with their migration. Here is a recent paper showing that sky glow, which is the artificial brightening of the night sky due to light pollution, sky glow is the second most important factor determining where birds will stop flying to take a break. And that's not good, because this means we are directly interfering with their natural flying habits. They are trying to conserve energy. It's a tremendously taxing thing for them to do, to fly thousands of miles from their wintering ground to their summering grounds. And we've disrupted it with sky glow, and we're causing millions of birds to veer off course and land in the wrong place, where maybe they won't find their food, or maybe they'll crash into a building. It's certainly not helping them. It's not just birds, it's not just mammals, it's fish as well. If you shine lights into water, including streams, rivers, ocean, you disrupt fish that are trying to migrate, trying to mate, trying to find food. It's not just those vertebrates, it's also invertebrates, it's insects. Here, everybody's favorite insect, fireflies. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of fireflies on a warm July night, seen here over Elwell Island in the middle of the Connecticut River between Northampton and Hadley, as the moon and the stars set. And these fireflies are negatively affected by light pollution. Well, if you turn a light on them, they go away. And we're turning lights on everywhere. We're making it harder and harder and harder for fireflies to find the dark areas that they need. When they flash their lights, they're communicating with each other, looking for mates. They need darkness to mate. And in fact, as a result of light pollution, there are species of fireflies threatened with extinction. We have a local hero here in Massachusetts, Avalon Owens, and another one, Sarah Lewis. Sarah Lewis runs a lab at Tufts that studies especially the effect of light pollution on fireflies. Avalon Owens did graduate work with Sarah Lewis at Tufts, is now at Harvard as a postdoc, expanding that to study moths. And their work, especially Avalon's work, has really brought this issue to the attention of other not ornithologists, entomologists, and demonstrated through rigorous work the incredible importance of light pollution in the ongoing steep decline in insect populations. You've probably all heard about something about the insect apocalypse, as the press has been calling it. And Avalon has pointed out in several papers, prominent papers, how light pollution is one of the drivers of that decline. And this has gotten a lot of press. Here's one of those examples picked up by various different news sources. And here's a picture of a bright light, and those zigzags are the light of moths and other bugs attracted to the light at night, probably fatally. Those bugs are probably going to die. Avalon points out it's not just the light going up in the sky that's a problem. That's the light that we astronomers care about the most. But for the bugs and the bats and the frogs and the mammals and the critters, it's the light going down as well that matters. It's all the light at night, the artificial light, that matters, and they don't want any of it. So what's the best light for all living creatures? Zero artificial light at night. Here's a picture of my own street light. I mean, the street light outside my house, with moths and bugs flying around, and they're almost all goners. They're going to be picked off by predators, or they're going to die of exhaustion. They're not doing what they should be doing, which might be pollinating, or at least mating, or foraging for food. This is a table from one of Avalon's papers summarizing all the different effects on all these different kinds of species in all these different scientific papers. There's a lot of evidence for everything I'm telling you. The total number of insect species is upwards of 5 million. Only 1 million of them have even been described. Butterflies and moths are 180,000 of those species, and almost all of them are nocturnal. So it's not just the diurnal insects that we know and love, like this monarch butterfly that I photographed in Hadley, that is pollinating and is certainly helping pollinate crops, but it's largely actually the nighttime moths that most of us don't get to see. And this also has gotten a fair amount of press. Here's an article in the New York Times recently about this issue in general, about going out at night and the pleasure of observing moths and that element of the nighttime environment that comes alive. Uh, but it's got lots of more implications, for example, specifically for pollination. So most of the people, when they hear the word pollinator, they think bees, right? Honeybees, those pollinate, yes? Well, sure, they do, but most pollinators are actually nighttime insects, and artificial light is a serious threat to those insects. This is one paper in Nature recently. Here's another paper finding that the number of visits by pollinating insects uh, to flowers at night went down by more than half, by 62% in the presence of light at night. And furthermore, they found that the number of daytime visits went down as well. The bugs just went away, or they died, don't really know, but fewer bugs when there is light at night, fewer bugs in the nighttime and in the daytime. And it matters how bright the lights are. The brighter the light, the worse the effect. The stronger the repulsion, or the stronger the effect of decimating insect populations. And if we could just dim the lights, we would see insects affected less negatively. This plot shows the effect of lighting along roadways on caterpillars. And so it's not just the flying bugs, it's the caterpillars as well. And the horizontal line at the level 1 in this plot is the divider between more bugs above 1, fewer bugs below 1. And the different colors represent different kinds of lights. And you see that every single kind of light negatively affects the amount of caterpillars that you find along roadways. In the presence of streetlights, we always get fewer caterpillars, not more, except in just one exception. The great majority, fewer caterpillars. So light pollution is one of the causes of the dramatic decline in insects that we are witnessing worldwide. And it's such an irony that we spend all this time and money putting in things like the pollinator garden here in Pulaski Park in downtown Northampton. Volunteers led by Owen Wormser, who's a great landscape gardener, I highly recommend, and he's got a crew of volunteers that were assembled that did this beautiful planting of pollinator-friendly species as part of a whole Western Massachusetts-wide network, the Pollinator Network, providing flyways and foraging and good habitat, native habitat for pollinator species. So by daytime, we attract these species, and then at nighttime, we zap them with deathly light rays. These lights installed by the city of Northampton in Pulaski Park are bad for the bugs. They're killing them. They're too bright, they're too blue, they're poorly shielded. They're complete overkill. These lights are causing light pollution in all the worst ways. They are bluer than recommended by the American Medical Association, bluer than recommended by the International Dark Sky Association. They're brighter by a factor of more than 10 than some parks in New York City. It's totally unnecessary. And if we talk to City Hall says, oh, well, we have people walking around in here and they need those lights at night. And, there are women walking around and it's dangerous for them. That's explicitly what the justification has been for just keeping the lights the way they are. But we know that it's worse than that. It's not even good for people. Look, this guy was perfectly healthy until he sat down under that light, and now look at him. Look what happened. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, that's not what happened. But, really my point is, well, the lights are there to try to deter unwanted behavior, like a drunk lying down on a park bench. But it didn't deter him. It doesn't stop him at all. It doesn't stop people from, peeing in the bushes or sleeping out here. What it does stop them from doing is getting a good sleep. And maybe they deserve to get that good sleep. It's certainly not stopping crime, but it is making everybody unhealthy, and it's killing the bugs. It's even worse than that. Some people kill bugs intentionally with light. This is a picture of one of those bug zappers that I snapped by the rail trail in Hadley. This is attracting mosquitoes to electrocute them, but mosquitoes are only about 1% of the bugs that get killed by that bug light. 99% of them are harmless or even beneficial bugs that also get killed. To summarize this section, there's a lot of research about the negative effects of artificial light at night on wildlife. These are just some of the institutes around the country that focus on this issue. Some of them are very local here, like Smith College, and Richard Stevens, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, was one of the leaders of the research into the light at night and cancer link in humans. It's recognized at the international level. The United Nations has an agency called the Union for the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, that issued recently this resolution that said, well, light pollution has the following problems on wildlife, and made the following recommendations, which are basically what I'm telling you here. Don't overlight, don't use too much blue light, all the common sense things I'm summarizing. I was part of this United Nations level report that concluded the same things. Artificial light at night, ALAN, can have significant effects on organisms and reduce the resilience of populations, affect ecological function, and so on. And we also made recommendations consistent with the IUCNs and consistent with what I'm telling you here. There is a United Nations Convention on Migratory Species that has this whole guideline for minimizing light pollution to protect migratory species. So it's recognized at the international level in the scientific community that we have a problem. To summarize the section, we all know what would happen if you went to a wetland and you drained all the water out. What would happen to the wildlife there? We all know it would die. We know that the wildlife depends on the water in the wetland to thrive. But just as much as it depends on the water, the wildlife also depends on darkness at night. And if we take that darkness away, we have ruined the habitat. And the wildlife will suffer just as much as if we had drained it. Fortunately, this is recognized not just internationally, but even nationally in some corners of our government. The National Park Service is actually great on this issue. They have a whole night skies division, and they do a lot of night sky programming at the national parks. You can go to Acadia National Park, like this, the picture in the upper left here, and not the very blue picture. That's the night sky in Acadia. Or you can go to the Grand Canyon or Bryce, one of the western national parks. There's a lot of programming there where they recognize that half the park is after dark, and they work hard to protect darkness at night. There's an international declaration, the Starlight Declaration, which basically says all humans have a right to a starry sky. They have a right to see the stars. They have a right to darkness at night. And it is not okay to take that right away. But here's a problem. Light pollution is getting worse, not better. It's growing fast. Here was the United States in the late 50s showing color coding and light pollution in the 70s, in the mid 90s, and a projection to just next year. And this is from 10 years ago, this plot, but it's, or more than 10 years ago, probably 20 years ago. It's probably an underestimate. You can see everything east of the Mississippi is just solid light pollution. There are only very few little dark spots in Maine and the Adirondacks and Vermont where you can, or New Hampshire, you can find something approaching pristine dark skies. It's getting worse faster than we thought. This is a paper that came out last year by friends of mine, colleagues of mine, who used citizen science observations, 50,000 people around the world measuring the brightness of the night sky by naked eye, and they find light pollution is getting worse by 10% per year. Remember that population growth is only 1% per year globally. 10% per year, light pollution is getting worse. We're all using more light than we did the year before on average. How about locally? What's that look like here in the valley? This is a light pollution map, and I highly recommend that you poke around on this website yourself, lightpollutionmap.info. You see the website there. And you can go anywhere in the world with this map and see what the light pollution is like. Here was light pollution here in the valley in 2012. And now let's take it forward and see what it looked like less than 10 years later. Here's 2021. And I'll go back and forth, and you can see, oh yes, the light pollution is creeping out into the darker areas. And making them less dark. The light pollution is getting worse in this very short time scale. It's easily measurable. If we zoom in on the area of Northampton, then we'll see the color coding where red is worse and yellow is better and green is even better. But there's no place with pristine dark skies in Northampton. If we click on it in the map, we got some numbers, including the one that it says ratio. Where I clicked was Fitzgerald Lake, the conservation area, where we're trying to protect the natural land to help all the species of plants and animals thrive. But the sky is 3 times brighter than naturally dark sky, 3 times. So it's 400% brighter than, do I get that right? 100, it's 200%, it's 3 times brighter than naturally dark sky. There is no darkness over Fitzgerald Lake. Bortle class 5, that is a scale that astronomers use. It's a scale of 1 to 9, where 1 is a pristine dark sky and 9 is Las Vegas or Times Square. And in Northampton, pretty much anywhere in Northampton, we're at about a 5. So what does the sky look like? Well, you can barely see the Milky Way. I think if we went to Fitzgerald Lake tonight, we would struggle to see the Milky Way, even if it were clear and dark. Well, how does this happen? Here's another concrete example. This is the street outside my house. Where's the street light? It was broken. That night it was broken. And I was so happy because I could go out and set up my camera and take a picture while it was broken. And I could see the stars. And it was in a funny way. It was off, and then it was on, and then it was off, and then it was on. So I took these pictures to show what it was like. This is the old street light. Before, it's this high pressure sodium. This is before the city changed them over in 2016 to new LED street lights. So here's the old one, and get ready, here comes the new one that the city installed in 2016, and there it is. So here's my old street light, and here's my new street light. It's the same camera, the same location, the same lens, the same setting, same exposure time, but the street light is much worse glare, brighter, much more blue light. Okay, that's light pollution from the ground, but I would be remiss if I didn't also mention the new form of light pollution from space. These are 4 pictures of professional astronomical observatory targets that have been photobombed by Elon Musk SpaceX Starlink satellites. All the streaks you see there, each streak is an individual artificial satellite launched by SpaceX, the Starlink satellites, that are in orbit around the Earth that have passed through these pictures, ruining the pictures. And they actually make the sky brighter by some amount that is getting worse and worse and worse. They also cause debris that brightens the night sky. And we're just at the beginning of a dramatic uptick in the number of satellites being launched into space. Just a few years ago, it was a total of 2,000 satellites. Already now it's 6,000 satellites, and it's on the way to 100,000 to 500,000 satellites in the next decade. So this is a problem that we're just beginning to wrap our minds around. But back to ground-based light pollution, how do we fix it? In the remaining few minutes, I just want to address some ways to move forward. Here again is Pulaski Park, the so-called pollinator garden, blasted with deathly light rays all night long, even when nobody's there, except the homeless people trying to sleep. So there's injustice, social injustice, and crime against nature. How do we fix it? Well, number 1, the light should go down only, not up into the sky. Not lights like this one. They should be like that one. They should not be lights like this one, shining into neighboring buildings and up into the sky. They should be like this, with the light going down only, letting the neighbors sleep. Not like these lights on the left, the wall pack, the yard light, the floodlight, but like the lights on the right, fully shielded, we call that, fully shielded against glare. Not like the ones on the left, very bad, but the ones on the right, the best lights, shining down only. Not the light shining the orange and red, but only the green light. It's simple. If you have a light that's on a swivel, a hinge, don't install it like that. Install it like that, horizontally. Don't install it at an angle, install it horizontally. We know what they were thinking when they put that light in on the left. They were thinking, oh, I want to send the light over to the side where the parking lot is. What they're not thinking is the beam is actually very broad, and it's so broad that a lot of the light's going up into the sky. A lot of it is causing glare. Instead, if they had just done it like this in the first place, they would have been fine. The light goes down where it's useful. It totally illuminates the parking lot. Fortunately, UMass 5 Co-op Bank was willing to hire their their person to come out in a cherry picker at their expense and go and readjust the lights when I asked them to. These are not new concepts, right? We all know these concepts. Every time you go to the live theater and you sit in the audience and you look at the stage, you can see that the action on the stage, the music, the performers, the actors, whatever it is, without the light shining in your eyes. That's the way they're designed. The number one rule of theater lighting is don't shine the light in the audience's eyes. Shine it on the stage. The people on the stage are blinded by the lights. They can't see anything out in the audience. But in the audience, you can see everything fine. You can even see the people sitting next to you, even though the light is not shining directly on you. Where's that light coming from? Well, the whole stage has become a diffuse source of light. There's diffuse source, there's no glare. This is what we should do outside as well. How come we forget this basic rule when we go to outdoor lighting? Number two, minimize the amount of blue light at night. I would hate to live in this house on Village Hill in Northampton, the old Hospital Hill, next to this bright blue unshielded light shining right into the windows. You would need a super thick blackout shade to block that light. And that's in fact what most people on Village Hill have to use. Fortunately, the technology is there. There's no good reason not to go with warmer colors, what we call warmer colors, meaning less blue, meaning a lower number on this Kelvin scale. So not 5,000, not 4,000, even 3,000 is bluer than it needs to be. That's what Northampton streetlights are. I'm happy to say that there are great examples, and I've listed some of them here, that have gone with much warmer color streetlights. And guess what? People love them. The police love them. There's less glare. They can see better. Everybody sleeps better. It's better for all the problems I've discussed. Northampton just redid its own lighting ordinance, and it has now set a limit of 2,700K for all future lights in Northampton, including both city and private. Number three, don't use more light than you need. Minimize the brightness and turn the lights down or off when you need to. Street lights all have one of those things, those gizmos. I'm holding one here in my hand that sits on top of the street light that has a sensor that looks for the sun to go down, and it tells the street light to turn on. But you can get one of these if the street light is a new LED like the ones in Northampton. You can get one of these that actually controls the street light more than that and tells it to dim after, say, 1 o'clock in the morning, to dim down to 50% or 25%. You save energy and cut light pollution dramatically, or you could even turn it off completely. All of these recommendations I've just made are summarized in the so-called 5 principles, the 5 principles of responsible outdoor lighting. And this is a joint set of principles brought together by the Illuminating Engineering Society and the International Dark Sky Association, 2 former sort of enemies who got together to come together with these 5 principles. The light should be useful. Don't just put it out at night for any reason, for no good reason. It should be targeted, face it down only, or towards the thing that you actually want to light, not the neighbors or the sky. Use low light levels, no brighter than necessary. Controlled, turn it off when you don't need it, and use warm colors, minimize blue light. So these are, notice there are no numbers in here, it's just principles. So you could get your city or your town or your school or your institution to adopt these 5 principles, get them to endorse them with no commitment. And it's just getting the conversation going. But if you can get them to commit to endorsing these principles, then maybe they will start to think about what their actions are really doing to the nighttime environment and make better decisions. And you can start that conversation with these 5 principles. Well, where is your city or your town or your school or your job, your employer going to find good lights? Are there good lights available? Or do we have to put in bad lights like this light up on Village Hill? Of course there are good lights available. They could have installed this good light that's fully shielded against glare. They just made a mistake. They didn't know. They could have installed lights in downtown Northampton that were like the ones in Burlington or Mystic, Connecticut, that are much better shielded against glare than the one outside my house. Or the Amtrak station in Berlin has great lights. How come our Amtrak station in Northampton has terrible lights? So these decisions get made all the time for no good reason, just out of ignorance. Most people who are installing lights don't actually understand light. They understand electricity and voltage and watts. It's usually electricians who have not been trained. They just don't know about actual effects of light pollution. There's some great examples right here in Northampton and downtown. These are perfect. Notice how you can see the signs, Pinch Pottery, Happy Valley. You can see the sidewalk, you can see the building front, but you can't really see the light source very clearly. It's very well shielded against glare. That's the way the light should be. Another example, you can't see the light source, you can't see the light bulb, you see the target. That's the way the light should be. If you can see the light bulb itself, that's glare, that's not good. Or these lights in on Smith College campus, right outside my window where I'm sitting right here. These are almost perfect. They're shielded well. They're not too bright. They're a nice warm color, and they're providing just enough light for people to see the path, but not so much that they are disrespectfully impacting the nighttime environment. So that, in fact, at Smith, I can enjoy the stars rising over Paradise Pond and listen to the geese honking, or that was the splash of a beaver tail that maybe you could just hear. And it's cheek by jowl with 3,000 residents of Smith College. And Smith has really taken this very seriously. They've endorsed the 5 principles, and they work hard to resist the pressure for more light, more light, more light that some people are bringing. They did a great job with their new library. They hired one of the world's best lighting designers, Suzanne Tillotson, who did this beautiful job of lighting the outside and the inside of Nielsen, the new big library. So it's minimized glare, and it's minimized light pollution. It's right next to our observatory, where we're doing research and teaching students the constellations and how to use telescopes. And there's minimal impact from this big new development. It could have been much worse. I'm so relieved and proud of Smith for making these choices. There are businesses in town that have made excellent decisions or made bad decisions, but willing to correct them, like Goggins Real Estate, which was willing to pay for this guy to come out in the cherry picker and fix the light, and the bank that I already showed you, and State Street that had these horrible glare bombs shining into the eyes of every passerby, but they were willing to let me come by and re-aim them, climb up on my ladder and put in some glare shields, and now it's much better, and it's safer and more pleasant. And same thing here for Pop's Package Store on Main Street across from the Northampton post office. Terrible lights to begin with, but they let Gary Hartwell and me go up on ladders and readjust the lights. And now there's minimal glare. You can see the front of the building and the sidewalk just the way you want. You have safety, better safety than before with less light pollution. These are all great lights. They're fully shielded against glare. The one on the lower right is perfect for a walkway or a patio or a porch if you need a light there at night. Where can you find lights like these? Well, you can find them at darksky.org, which has a whole certification process. You can find them at this website of the observatory at our neighbor in Quebec. You can find them at Home Depot. You can find them at Lowe's. They have a section of dark sky friendly lighting. All of these lights would be fine as porch lights or yard lights with zero glare, as long as you put the right light bulb inside them. Massachusetts has statewide legislation that is working its way through the legislature right now. Our organization, I lead Dark Sky Massachusetts. We're the main authors of this legislation. It's got a good chance of success. It's got the best chance it's ever had, and we've been working on this for many years, and it keeps getting closer and closer. And this session, we think we're going to get it across the finish line. And this is something that we'd love to have your help with. It was just reported out of the relevant committee, the Telecommunication Utilities and Energy Committee, favorably. And on the House side, it's been bundled with a big environmental omnibus bill that is like a must-pass bill. So we think our bill is going to get through for the first time, and very happy to have your help with it if you can provide it. It will institute for the first time in the state of Massachusetts common sense regulations. that have been adopted elsewhere. All the other New England states have some kind of statewide control of light pollution. Massachusetts is the holdout. It's the one state in New England that has no statewide control. It says all the basic things I've told you, nothing bluer than 3000 K, not brighter than needs to be, has to be fully shielded against glare, and also tells the utilities to stop charging cities and towns for electricity they're not even using. Cities and towns are now overpaying in a way that I can tell you the details of if you want, but it's unfair, it's wasting money, and it's wasting energy. So happy to have your help. The city of Northampton passed this resolution endorsing the previous version of this bill, and it would be great if your city or town could do the same thing. Northampton, as I said, has its own lighting code. Your city or town may or may not. I know some of you are from East Hampton. East Hampton does not have lighting code. It should have lighting code. Over 50 cities and towns in Massachusetts have some kind of bylaw or ordinance protecting against light pollution. Northampton has had one from almost 20 years ago. It was just updated, and it has these good features to it that I'm very, very happy to see happen in Northampton. But this is something you could do in your city or town as well. Or you could join DarkSky Massachusetts. You could just join the general parent organization, DarkSky International. Just go to their website, darksky.org, for more on anything I've touched on tonight. This is the go-to organization on this issue. We also lead, as Marilyn said, we have a local organization, Northampton City Lights. If you're in Northampton, please join us. If you're not in Northampton, start your own organization just like this. This is a simple website we put together that has promoted dark sky advocacy here in Northampton. And just to write the last couple of minutes here, what can Kestrel Land Trust do? Here are some ideas. The Land Trust could endorse the 5 principles. It costs you nothing to do that. You could engage with our state reps directly. Our state reps for Northampton are already co-signers, but that's not true for others. For example, Mindy Dom in East Hampton has not signed on yet. Would love to have her help. We'd love to have you help educate members about the importance of protecting darkness at night for all of Kestrel's properties. All of that land that we're trying to conserve, all the health of the animals and plants on that land depend on darkness at night, and most people have a poor understanding of that. We can help. We can educate our officials about it in the same way. I'm happy to partner with you, excuse me, on events such as the upcoming International Dark Sky Week, which is the first week in April. You could host night walks. I know that there are lots of wonderful events that happen on Kestrel properties, and doing it at night is a really special thing. I know you've had some of those in the past, looking for owls and things like that. And to broaden the scope of that somewhat to include dark sky awareness and education and advocacy is a special thing that Land Trust can do. And finally, you might consider whether some Kestrel property could, at some point in the not too distant future, get certified as an official dark sky place. That certification is done through the DarkSky International, and if you go to their website, you'll see what the criteria are. There are a bunch of different categories that you might consider, but that would be a really cool thing. There is only one that is currently in the works in Massachusetts. That's Nantucket, but there are no others yet. But Kestrel could be a leader in that field. So to summarize very briefly, light pollution is bad for all the reasons I've discussed, but it's fixable, and it's actually easy to fix technically, physically, practically. It's hard socially, emotionally, but that's our job. And finally, I'll just finish with this view of the Connecticut River with a special thing hanging there in the sky, a comet. Comet Neowise. During the pandemic, some of you might remember, it made a big splash. Everybody was so excited about this maybe once in a lifetime brightest comet, a bright naked eye comet. Most people, however, in the United States and here in the Valley didn't see it. They couldn't see it because of light pollution. It was right there, this special gift from the outer solar system, and most people missed it because of light pollution. I have as a fervent hope that we can fix that problem. I think it's fixable. We can bring back the stars. We can bring back the Milky Way. We can bring back the comets. We can protect wildlife. We can protect public health. We can do all of this by just turning out the lights that we don't need. It's as simple as that. Thank you so much for your attention. I haven't seen any questions come up in the chat, but I'm very happy to engage in conversation now and hear what your concerns and thoughts and questions are about any of these issues. I'll stop the share here so that we can all see each other.
Wow, thank you so very much, James. I certainly learned, and I imagine you all did too, the extent of light pollution, worse than we may have imagined. However, the solutions are so available, so practical, so doable. And thank you so much for everything that you put into the slide, James, this presentation, with your extensive knowledge and experience, and also for giving that practical list of what Kestrel Land Trust can do, what we as Kestrel Land Trust members can do. So I will be sure to share that, and how timely that International Dark Sky Week is coming up in April. So
Yeah,
let's all be sure to celebrate that. And one thing that we can all do is this recording will be available, and I'll share it with everybody who's registered. Please share it widely, watch it again, share it with your friends, family. Thank you. Okay, I see some questions now in the chat. Yes, any questions that you have, please write, or if you'd rather speak, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. So let's see,
great.
Kathy's wondering if there,
Yes.
yeah, is there an updated alert about the pending legislation somewhere?
Thank you for that, Kathy. The one that you see on the Dark Sky website is from last year. So apologies for that. We are a lean, mean organization of volunteers, and our web uh, maintainer has probably fallen behind. He's an amazing guy, Kelly Beatty. He is one of the publishers, the former editors of Sky and Telescope magazine. He's constantly traveling all around the world, leading international groups. He's about to leave for an eclipse trip, in fact. And so getting him to actually sit down and make those updates to the website is sometimes challenging. But what he's actually doing is pushing the legislation forward with constant phone calls to the relevant legislators. He's politically savvy. So I'm sorry about that. Thanks for pointing it out. Um, we should just make sure that we actually get those updates on the website. If you really want to know more about it, I will tell you where the information flows more directly than that website is within our organization of Dark Sky Massachusetts. We meet once a month on the first Wednesday of every month by Zoom. And we started doing that before the pandemic, by the way. And so we're experts at Zoom. And we organize annual events. We have an annual meeting every fall or winter, early winter. But most of the action and the discussion and exchange of information happens at our monthly meetings and on our listserv. And I will pop my email into the chat here. And you can send me an email, just pop me an email and say, if you want to be added to Dark Sky Mass's list. We have a Google list where we just discuss all of this stuff statewide, and people help each other out. Oh, I've got this terrible problem in my city. Can you help me out? Or what's happening with the event? And so that's where most of that updating is happening. And of course, we put things out on media as well, so it shows up in the newspaper and TV and so on. But you're right, we have to get it on our website.
Oh, that's tremendous, James. Thanks for sharing all these ways that people can learn, be in touch with you and one another. Chevy raised your hand. Chevy, can you unmute and ask your question?
Yes, James, Professor Lowenthal, I'd like to, this is one of the best and most informative and most important Kestrel presentations I think I've ever attended. I plan to contact I'm a town meeting member in South Hadley. I will contact our select board and town administrator about this. And I was so excited I could get to Berlin by train, and then I realized it wasn't Germany. There's a Berlin, up on 495. Anyway, I wanted to, you plugged Stellafane, and I was aware of that, but I'd like to mention the Aruna Hill Natural Science Center in Cummington, which is also a dark space, and the town of Cummington has vowed to keep it that way. We're a bunch of amateur astronomers. I took the Star Watch course a long time ago. Took my son up there many times. Have you been there, and would you recommend it to people here?
Thank you, Chevy, for that. Is it Chevy? Chevy?
Chevy, like the car.
Chevy. Thank you so much for that. I totally agree. Cummington is close to the sweet spot of Western Massachusetts natural darkness. And as you pointed out, Aruna Hill is a private property of, I can't remember, it must be, it's more than 20 acres of protected land, cooperatively owned by a group of amateurs who have developed it over the course of more than 20 years to be a private observatory, which they make available to visitors. And I've brought my classes from Smith College there on dark sky field trips before. We have a number of different areas in Western Mass that we go to. I'm always scoping out new ones. I'm right now checking out a new site that's closer to the Vermont border, up near in Hawley, actually, that I think will be a little bit darker, above Stump Sprouts ski area, some of you might know. But Cummington is pretty good. And I've also brought students numerous times, just a few miles away from Aruna Hill, to William Cullen Bryant Homestead, which is a Trustees of Reservations property, TOR property. And they make their place available to people at night free of charge. So we just pull up with a school bus full of Smithies, and we roll out of the school bus and spread our blankets out on the field and enjoy the Milky Way from there. And it's an incredible thing. You know, I ask my students all the time, I got 50 students in my intro class, how many of you have never seen the Milky Way? And half the hands go up.
No, I have to agree that when I took my older son and daughter to Cummington, we stopped on the road and we saw the Milky Way that I'd never seen it before. They had never seen it before, and I'd only seen it like deep in the heart of Texas on a lonely highway, you know, headed west. But just a PS, Aruna Hill has traditionally on Labor Day weekend concocted a full program. The kids make rockets and set them off. It's incredible. They have everything, but they're also solar observing during the day and, of course, night observing.
Thanks for that, Chevy. And Aruna Hill, their information flows mostly on Facebook, if I'm correct. I see there's also a question here from Mimi. Is it okay if I field that one, Marilyn?
Yes, go right ahead, James.
Okay, Mimi asks, where can we find information that rebuts the idea that lights are necessary for safety? This is definitely a big one. It's the one, fear of the dark and fear of strangers and fear of crime. That's why we have light pollution. That is exactly why we have it. Everybody thinks more light is safer. So how do we rebut that? Unfortunately, we can't just do it with facts, because the facts are already there, and people are not relying on facts to make their decisions. If they were, then we wouldn't have all this light pollution. They're relying on fear and story and emotion and what they absorb without thinking about it. So where can we find the information? Well, it's not that hard. If you just go to, for example, darksky.org, you will find links to numerous studies. You'll find a link to for example, the state of the science. Every, let's see, last year and the year before, Dark Sky has produced a compendium of scientific studies about the effects of light pollution on human health, on animals, and the science about lighting and safety. So there you'll find links to some of the current research. But I think the more important question is, how do we engage with our neighbors on this issue? How do we engage with our city officials on this issue? How do we convince the mayor of Northampton that we don't need those horrible glare bombs in Pulaski Park for safety, that it's not actually providing safety? There's no evidence for that. And it takes a long time. There is no silver bullet. If there were, we would have solved this a long time ago, because we've been making these arguments for a long time. And I feel as if the best arguments actually are the good examples out there of cities and towns that have taken a different choice and have chosen, like Cummington or Flagstaff, Arizona, or Pepperell, Massachusetts, have taken a different path and have made the choice to protect their night sky and their pocketbook and their public health and their public safety by making all these choices, and have not experienced an uptick in crime, have not experienced a rash of break-ins. I think those good examples are worth their weight in gold. So I think our job is really to keep finding them and bring them up and bring them up. You know, peer pressure, that's the strongest force in the universe. So we have to harness it.
Thank you, James. Yeah, I can imagine that is a primary question for folks.
I
And
see.
a lot of misinformation about safety and light.
Yes.
Pat Wadsworth has raised her hand. Go ahead, Pat.
I have a question about how our eyes adapt to the darkness. So if I go out and walk the dog and I don't have any light around me and it's dark, all of a sudden I can see better. And then I come across a car or a street light or something, and all of a sudden I can't see anymore. Do you have any information that you could share with us about how we adapt?
Absolutely. The human eye is an incredible tool. It is so brilliant. It's so so sensitive and so adaptable, but it's not infinitely resilient. In the absence of light at night, if you let your eye get dark adapted the way you just described, you're out walking the dog and you don't have a headlight or a street light shining in your eyes, your eye starts to accumulate in the retina, the light sensitive part, a photosensitive chemical. What lets vision work is light comes into the eye, the lens makes an image on the retina, and that image is detected. The light is detected by rods and cones that are in the retina that have a special chemical that detects light. In the presence of strong light, like daytime, you know, we can leave light pollution out of it, just daytime sunshine, that chemical is highly depleted. You don't need much of it at all. And so there's very little bit of it there. But then as the sun goes down and darkness falls and your eye starts to build up that chemical, it's called rhodopsin. The rhodopsin starts to build up and build up and build up to the point where when you're fully dark adapted, which takes about half an hour of darkness, your eye is about 100,000 times more sensitive to light than it was during the daytime. So that's how the eye works normally. And then as soon as you shine a bright light, and especially blue light, you immediately bleach out that rhodopsin, you bleach out that light sensitive chemical, and you have to start all over again, or at least part of the way over again. That's why astronomers use red lights, because that does not ruin your night vision the way blue light does. Your cell phone is very good at producing blue light. Your computer screen is very good at producing blue light. And it's multiple problems. You know, that whole thing about melatonin, that's sensitive to blue light. But also your dark adaptation is sensitive to blue light. And so that's a little bit about how eyes work. And there's much more to it. You know, obviously the issue of glare is complicated. The transparency of the eye changes with age, but that's one of the short answers. Is there
Well, thank you, because I think we would, when there is less light, we can actually get more sensitive to the darkness and function.
If you control the glare, that is absolutely true. Glare is the culprit. Glare is the enemy. Glare is the flashlight that you're shining in your own eyes instead of on the ground. If you get rid of glare, and try this tonight, you know, or the next time you're out at night, look around you and notice what lights can you see the light bulb of and what lights can you not. If you can see the light bulb, then that's causing glare. And you can try just holding up your hand to block that light and see, you'll probably be able to see better. You'll see the surroundings better. You'll see the sky better for sure, but you'll even see whether there's an intruder or a pedestrian that you don't want to hit in a car, or something, you know, a tripping hazard. You'll see better without that glare. And we could talk more about how that works in the eye, but that's the basic. One more thing I just want to recommend, I'm going to put this in the chat here, an app called Flux, F.lux, on computers. F.lux, so if you just Google download Flux and install it on your Macintosh or your Windows machine, it will detect what time of day it is and where your computer is, and it will figure out when the sun is going down. And then it will control the blue light coming out of your screen. And it will slowly drop and drop and drop that blue light to the point where late at night, the screen will be this warm sort of amber color, but you won't see it happening until you turn it off by mistake, and suddenly, oh my, you're blinded by this horrible blue light. So it's incredibly effective, and that will help you get a good sleep. That will help reduce the blue light that you're detecting at night when you should be producing melatonin. It will help your body produce the melatonin that makes you sleepy and gives you good sleep. You can do the same thing on your phone. Phones all have some kind of similar thing. On an Apple iPhone, it's called Night Shift, and you should make sure that that is enabled to change the color at night to minimize the blue light on your phone.
What great suggestions. Thanks. Thank you, James. I do the Flux on my computer. What a difference that makes.
What a difference.
Any other questions for James? He has so much information and experience. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Chevy has a hand up.
Oh, Chevy, go right ahead.
Yes, I don't want to, I'm sure other people have many questions, I hope. And I just wanted to say that as Marilyn and Paula know, I'm a livery driver, and driving at night has become a real challenge because so many of the headlights are so bright. It's amazing how you can go down the highway, and I swear, some vehicles have lights that are 4 times brighter than the vehicle in front of them or behind them. And I don't think we realize that this is such a problem. Apparently, the manufacturers are putting in new lights, and I just don't understand why we can't make this a uniform quality, because after all, cars are inspected every year. There should be a way to control this. What are your opinions about that, Jim?
I totally agree with you, Chevy, and I'm afraid the only answer is that you have to move to Europe, because they are highly regulated in Europe and they are very poorly regulated in the United States. You're absolutely right. And it's gotten much worse very suddenly, very recently, as a result of LEDs. It was bad enough with the switch from incandescent to halogen, and high-end headlights on luxury automobiles like Audis and Porsches in Europe were coming out with blue headlights, which is much worse for glare in your eye. And so American manufacturers started copying that, and then third-party aftermarket headlight manufacturers started copying that with no regulation at all. In Europe, it's highly controlled. The beams have to be super directed not to shine in the eyes of oncoming headlights. The headlights all have to have windshield wipers to stop, to clear the snow or rain, to reduce glare. We don't have anything like that here. It's very poorly regulated, and this issue has been brought up numerous times to the Federal Highway Administration and the National Highway Transportation Safety Board, and or Safety Administration, whatever it's called, NHTSA. And I put in the chat here the single most prominent complainant against the federal government's refusal to take this seriously. On change.org, it's a petition called Ban Blinding Headlights. And the author of that is constantly suing all the major automobile companies and suing the federal government to try to force them to do the right thing. He's got tens of thousands of signatures, including mine and maybe including yours if you sign it. And it hasn't gotten much traction yet. eventually it will, but it's one of the least poorly regulated parts of this whole business. So we have a hard problem with regular light pollution. It's an even harder problem with the headlights. Thank you, Marilyn, again for being such a gracious host and for helping spread the love of the night sky and the love of nature, and for all the great work that Kestrel does, which I've been so proud and happy to know about for so many years.
Well, thank you, James. And what you shared has been illuminating in a healthy way.
Thank you.